She arrived home early, unannounced, carrying the smell of rain and the faint metallic tang of the elevator cables still humming in her ears. The house stood the same way it always had, beige siding, the stubborn porch light flickering like a tired eye. Yet everything felt off, as if the air itself had shifted while she was gone, as if walls could learn secrets. Her heels clicked once on the stone step, then she stopped, surprised by her own hesitation. $1 billion. That was the number they'd said, the number that had filled the room with applause that felt too loud for her chest. Promotion. Congratulations. History made. She had smiled the practiced smile of someone who knew how to stand still while the world decided she was worthy. She hadn't texted him. The thought had occurred somewhere between the boardroom and the car, then dissolved. She wanted the quiet shock of it. His face lifting. His mouth forming her name. The simple, ordinary miracle of being seen. She slid her key into the lock, gentle, almost apologetic, and pushed the door open. The house breathed back at her. Lemon cleaner. Old books. The faint ghost of last night's coffee. Her coat brushed the wall, damp, and she made a mental note to hang it later. She took off her shoes and carried them, barefoot now, feeling the cool wood under her toes. Somewhere upstairs a floorboard creaked, or maybe it was only memory. She paused again, listening, the way she used to when she came home late from work and wanted to be sure she wouldn't wake him. Voices drifted from the kitchen. His voice first, familiar, relaxed in a way it never was when he spoke to her after midnight. Another voice answered, softer, a man she didn't recognize, the rhythm of it carrying the ease of someone seated, comfortable. She stood in the hallway, shoes dangling from her fingers, her heart performing a small, unnecessary sprint. I didn't expect her back today, her husband said. He sounded tired. Not angry. Just tired. The other man laughed quietly. She'll be celebrating somewhere fancy, right? There was the scrape of a chair. A glass set down. Silence stretched, long enough for her to feel her breath growing loud inside her head. I don't know how much longer I can do this, her husband said. Not whispered. Not dramatic. Plain. Like a weather report. Her stomach tightened, a slow pull downward. She leaned her shoulder against the wall, the paint cool through her sleeve. Do what? The man asked. Be married to someone who's never really here, he said. Even when she is. Her first instinct was defense, the familiar catalogue of nights worked, flights taken, promises postponed for later. The argument assembled itself automatically, each point sharp and shining. Then she felt something else underneath it, heavier. A dull recognition. She had said similar things, once, to herself, in mirrors that refused to answer. She loves you, the man said, uncertain now. I know, her husband replied. That's the worst part. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind them, the boardroom lights flared again, the applause, the word exceptional ringing hollow as a bell struck underwater. She had thought of him then, fleetingly, imagined calling, imagined his pride. She had pictured him standing in the kitchen, alone, reheating leftovers. I'm proud of her, he continued, and her heart lifted, traitorous and desperate. But I don't recognize my own life anymore. I wake up next to a ghost who smells like airports. A laugh bubbled in her throat and died there. Airports. She could summon them instantly. Carpet patterns memorized by grief. The ache of sleeping upright. The way success tasted like tin after midnight. She took a step back, careful, her heel bumping softly against the baseboard. No one noticed. The conversation flowed on, details blurring, words losing their edges. She felt herself receding, like a tide pulled by a moon she hadn't seen coming. In the living room, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from the CEO, still buzzing with congratulations, a champagne emoji she hadn't had the energy to delete. She didn't check it. She stared instead at the framed photo on the mantel, the two of them years ago, younger, sunburned, laughing at nothing. She tried to remember what she'd been saying in that moment, what future she'd been pointing toward with her free hand. The voices in the kitchen lowered. Chairs moved. The man murmured something about getting going. Footsteps approached the door. She panicked, stepped back into the shadow of the hallway, heart hammering. The front door opened. Closed. Silence returned, thick and absolute. She remained where she was, shoes clenched, breath shallow, as her husband stood alone in the kitchen, unaware that the life he had just spoken aloud was standing 10 feet away, listening to it break. She did not move, even when the refrigerator clicked on, even when the clock above the sink shifted its weight and sighed. Time felt brittle, something that might shatter if she breathed too deeply. She wondered how many evenings like this had already happened without her, conversations she had never heard, truths released only in her absence. The thought did not accuse, it simply existed, heavy and quiet. She pressed her back to the wall, memorizing the coolness, the exact place where success ended and something unnamed began. In the kitchen, her husband exhaled, long and slow, the sound of a man alone with his life. She closed her fingers around the shoes until the straps bit into skin, grounding her in pain. Then she stood there, invisible, listening to nothing, to everything, to the space where a marriage waited, fragile, unfinished, asking nothing, offering no forgiveness, no blame. Only the house breathing, and 2 lives paused, balanced on silence, neither of them brave enough yet to speak. Outside, rain resumed, soft and patient, as if the world refused answers. She stayed there longer than made sense, until the house settled into its night sounds and her legs trembled with the effort of stillness. Eventually, practicality crept back in, thin and insistent. She hung her coat, placed her shoes side by side beneath the bench, and washed her hands in the downstairs bathroom, watching the water bead and run, watching herself in the mirror as if she were a stranger who had wandered in by mistake. Her face looked unchanged. The same careful mouth. The same eyes that had learned to look steady under scrutiny. She dried her hands slowly, folded the towel with precision, and stepped back into the hall. He was at the kitchen counter, back to her, scrolling on his phone. His shoulders were slumped in a way she recognized, the posture of someone trying to be small inside his own life. For a moment she considered retreating, leaving again without a word, preserving this fragile knowledge for later, for a better time. But the better time had been promised too often. It had learned how to hide. "I'm home," she said. He startled, turning too quickly, relief and something like guilt crossing his face before he could smooth it away. "You're early." "Yes," she said, and waited. The pause stretched, thin as wire. "How was it?" he asked, already reaching for the kettle, the habit automatic. "They promoted me," she said. The words sounded foreign, like they belonged to someone else's mouth. He nodded, a small smile lifting one corner of his lips. "I saw the email." She watched him fill the kettle, watched his hands, remembered the way they used to cup her face when they were young and poor and everything felt possible. She thought of the sentence she'd overheard, the plainness of it, the way it had landed without cruelty. She wondered how many truths lived that way, unadorned, waiting for someone to hear them. "Congratulations," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "Thank you." She sat at the table, the chair scraping softly. "It's a big role." "I know." Silence settled between them, familiar as furniture. The kettle began to hiss. She let it, used the sound to steady herself. "I didn't call," she said. He shrugged. "You don't usually." Something in her tightened. She nodded, accepting the truth of it without defense. "I wanted to surprise you." He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You did." The kettle clicked off. He poured the water, steam fogging his glasses. She noticed he hadn't offered her tea. She hadn't asked. They talked then, carefully, about schedules, about an upcoming conference, about the neighbor's dog that barked at nothing. The words moved around what mattered, respectful, cautious. She felt the weight of the unspoken pressing against her ribs, making it hard to breathe. "There was someone here," she said at last. Her voice barely trembled. He stiffened, then relaxed. "A friend from work." "I heard you," she said. Not accusing. Just naming. His mouth opened, closed. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her, hands folded. "How much?" "Enough." He studied her face, searching for something. "I didn't mean for you to." "I know," she said. She surprised herself with how calm she sounded. "You weren't wrong." His eyes flickered. "I didn't say." "You didn't have to," she replied. "I've been absent." "You've been successful," he said, a little too quickly. "There's a difference." "Is there?" she asked. He looked away. The clock ticked. She felt the promotion settle in her chest, heavy as a medal she wasn't sure she wanted to wear. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "I really am." "I heard that too," she said. He exhaled, a long sound that carried years inside it. "I don't want to resent you," he said. "I don't want to be the person who waits." She reached for his hand, stopped halfway, let it rest on the table instead. "I didn't realize how lonely it's been," she said. "Not like this." "You were busy," he said, and the kindness of it hurt more than anger would have. "I can change some things," she said. The words felt fragile, easily broken. "I could say no sometimes." He considered her, really looked at her, as if measuring the distance between promise and reality. "I don't want to be the reason you're smaller," he said. She felt tears gather, unwelcome and hot. "I don't want to be alone inside a marriage," she said. They sat with that, the truth hovering between them like a held breath. Outside, the rain softened, then stopped, leaving the world rinsed and quiet. "I don't know what comes next," he said. "Neither do I," she replied. The admission felt like surrender. Or maybe like beginning. She stood, reached for him again, this time closing the distance. He took her hand, his grip tentative, as if afraid she might vanish if he held too tightly. They did not embrace. They simply stood there, connected by skin, listening to the house settle around them. Later, in bed, they lay side by side, not touching, the familiar space between them feeling newly charged. She stared at the ceiling, tracing old cracks, thinking of the life she had built, the life she had neglected, the way ambition had carried her forward while something essential lagged behind. Beside her, his breathing slowed, evened out. Sleep came for him, soft and merciful. She did not sleep. She counted the hours until morning, wondering which version of herself would wake up, and whether success would still feel like an answer when the silence finally demanded one. Morning arrived without ceremony. She woke before the alarm, the ceiling pale, her body already braced. He slept beside her, turned away, one hand curled under the pillow like a child guarding a secret. She watched him breathe and felt the ache of familiarity, the love that had not left, only thinned by distance. She dressed quietly, choosing clothes for comfort rather than armor. In the kitchen she made coffee for one, then two, poured carefully, as if sound could bruise him. He came in rubbing his eyes, hair uncombed, and nodded at the mug waiting for him. "Thank you," he said. They sat, steam rising, the house awake now. Sunlight touched the table where her hand had stopped short the night before. She thought of meetings already lining up, of congratulations that would arrive like weather she could not stop. "I'm supposed to fly tonight," she said. He didn't look surprised. "Of course you are." "I could delay," she added. The offer hovered, uncertain. He considered the coffee. "Would you resent me?" She opened her mouth, closed it. Truth arrived first. "Maybe. For a while." He smiled sadly. "Then go." Something in her flinched. "That's not what I want." "What do you want?" he asked, gently, and she realized she hadn't asked herself in years. After he left for work, she wandered the house. She touched the back of the couch, the framed photo, the window where dust caught light. In the spare room, boxes waited, half unpacked from moves dictated by her career. She opened one and found notebooks, old plans written in hopeful handwriting. "We will cook on Sundays. We will take a train somewhere just because." She sat on the floor and let the quiet press in. The promotion email buzzed again. She muted the phone. By afternoon, resolve hardened into something like courage. She called her assistant, cancelled the flight, absorbed the pause that followed. There would be consequences. She accepted them without ceremony. When he came home, she was cooking. Not reheating. Cooking. The smell filled the house, unfamiliar and grounding. He stopped in the doorway. "I stayed," she said. He set his bag down slowly. "For tonight." "For now." They ate. The food was imperfect, too salty, but warm. Conversation came in pieces. They spoke of small things until the larger one demanded space. "I'm scared," he said finally, "that I'll always be second." She nodded. "I'm scared I won't know who I am without the work." They looked at each other across the table, fear mirrored, unadorned. "I don't want to choose between us," she said. "Sometimes choosing is just deciding to stay," he replied. Night fell. They washed dishes together, shoulders brushing. In bed, she turned toward him. He turned too. The space closed, tentative, real. In the dark, she felt the weight of what she'd given up, and what she might still lose. She did not know if love could stretch to fit the life she'd built. She only knew she was here, listening to his breathing, choosing stillness over flight. Outside, a plane crossed the sky, unseen, its sound fading. She closed her eyes and let it go. She dreamed lightly, waking often, measuring minutes. At dawn she rose and wrote him a note, then tore it up, then wrote another. Words felt dangerous. She left them unsaid. The day unfolded slower. She declined calls, walked the neighborhood, noticed things she had missed, chalk drawings fading, a tree split by old lightning, a woman watering plants with care. Each small scene pressed against her ambition, asking different questions. In the afternoon he texted asking if she was okay. She answered yes, then no, then didn't send anything. When he returned, tired, she told him about canceling more than one trip. He listened, disbelief softening into gratitude edged with fear. "I don't want to be your project," he said. "You aren't," she replied. "You're my life." The words startled them both. They sat on the steps as evening cooled the air. He spoke about loneliness, about meals eaten standing, about friends assuming he was fine. She listened without fixing. That was new. Later, she opened her laptop and drafted an email setting boundaries she'd never set. Her hand shook. She sent it anyway. That night, they held each other, not tightly, but with intention. She knew nothing was solved. Only begun. The quiet knife was this: she loved him, and the cost would be real, either way. Sleep came unevenly. In the morning, consequences arrived. Emails firm, polite. She answered with equal firmness. He watched from the doorway, pride and worry braiding together. They planned a weekend without plans. Grocery lists. A walk. The ordinariness felt radical. At dusk, she checked flight prices and closed the browser. He noticed. Said nothing. That silence felt earned. They did not promise forever. They promised attention. It felt smaller. It felt harder. As night settled, she understood the knife would keep turning slowly, not to wound, but to carve a life that fit. She stood at the window, city lights distant, thinking of the girl she had been, hungry, certain speed equaled safety. That girl had carried her here. She thanked her, quietly, and let her rest. Behind her, he slept, trusting. The trust was the sharpest thing of all. Tomorrow would ask again. She would answer again. For now, she stayed. The house held them, unchanged yet altered by choice. She felt the weight of the promotion recede slightly, not gone, just set down. Love did not applaud. It waited. She breathed, counted, and remained, knowing the quiet knife would return, patient, until staying became a skill. Nothing promised ease. Only presence. The room dimmed. She turned off the light. In darkness, she chose him again, aware of the cost, willing to pay tonight. The stillness settled like snow, beautiful and cold, and she held it carefully, knowing morning would test it. Weeks passed without announcing themselves. No calendar marker, no revelation. Just mornings stacking, evenings folding into each other. She learned the texture of staying. It was heavier than leaving, required more muscle. The promotion settled into a distant hum, still present, still powerful, but no longer shouting. She negotiated, compromised, discovered the ache of being unavailable to everyone else and present to one person. The ache surprised her with its sharpness. He watched her carefully, not suspicious, but attentive, like someone listening for weather. Some days were easy. Others were brittle. They argued quietly about dishes, about time, about why silence felt louder now. When she flew again, shorter trips, he packed her bag with care that looked like forgiveness and felt like fear. When she returned, he waited without asking if she would keep doing it. One night, late, he told her he'd almost accepted a transfer months ago. Another city. A chance to start fresh where no one knew he was the one left behind. He hadn't told her then because she'd been standing on a stage, lights burning her into history. She listened, eyes stinging, understanding how near she'd come to losing him without ever knowing there had been a choice. "I thought if I went," he said, "it would be easier than asking you to stay." She rested her head against his shoulder and felt the truth of it settle. Easier, yes. Not better. Work pressed harder. Boundaries tested. She learned which battles mattered, which emails could wait. She learned how resentment grows quietly when praise comes too easily. She learned how love feels when it is no longer assumed but actively chosen. Some nights she missed the clean loneliness of hotel rooms, the clarity of being wanted for what she produced. She did not say that aloud. Instead, she washed dishes. She listened. He changed too. Took classes. Found pleasure in small improvements that did not require permission. He stopped apologizing for needing her. That, oddly, frightened her most. On an ordinary afternoon, rain tapping the windows, she received the call she'd expected eventually. A new offer. Bigger. Louder. The kind that remakes legacies. She took the call in the spare room, door closed, voice steady. When it ended, she stayed seated, hands folded, feeling the old hunger stir. She told him that evening. He nodded, asked questions, did not flinch. They sat with it. The house seemed to listen. "What do you want?" he asked again, the same question, older now. She did not answer immediately. She thought of the girl with notebooks, the woman with stages, the wife who had learned the cost of absence. She thought of the sound of rain stopping. She thought of the quiet knife that had been turning, carving. "I want us," she said. "And I don't know how to make that clean." He reached for her hand, held it firmly. Clean isn't the goal. They decided nothing that night. Decision, they'd learned, was not a single act but a practice. Days later, she declined the offer. The email was brief. The aftermath was not. Calls came. Concern. Disbelief. She absorbed it, surprised by her own calm. He watched her send the message, then stepped back, as if unsure what to do with the weight she'd just set down. They did not celebrate. They ordered takeout. They sat on the floor and ate from cartons, laughing softly at nothing. Time moved. The house filled with ordinary plans. A trip by train, finally. Sundays with cooking that improved. The photo on the mantel was replaced, not with a new image, but with space. They let the wall breathe. Then, quietly, loss arrived. Not a person. A version of herself. She felt it one morning, reaching for the phone that no longer rang the same way. Grief came without spectacle. She stood at the sink and cried until it passed, then dried her hands and went to work that mattered differently. He found her later, eyes red, did not ask why. He held her while she let go of what she had been taught to want. Love did not erase the grief. It made room. Years would pass. The story would not end neatly. There would be other offers, other tests. Some she would take. Some she would refuse. They would fail at staying sometimes, then try again. On the anniversary of the day she came home unannounced, they sat in the kitchen as evening fell. The same clock ticked. The same refrigerator hummed. She realized how close she had come to hearing nothing at all. "I'm glad you stayed," he said. "So am I," she replied, and meant it, even knowing the cost. Later, alone, she stood in the hallway where she had once hidden, shoes biting into her fingers. The memory no longer cut. It instructed. She breathed, listened to the house, to the life they were still building, fragile and real. In the end, there was no triumph. Only this, two people choosing each other in small, unremarkable ways, again and again, knowing silence could freeze them if they let it. She turned off the light, leaving the hallway dark, and walked back to him. The house exhaled. Nothing more was required.